It's the end of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. Well, you can see on that Sharp Interactive board, I got a theater, a stage, curtains open. Above the theater, it says HP Security Theater. And I want to talk about some of the rhetoric that I believe is coming out of HP and how I believe that to be a bigger threat than the threat coming out of China regarding chips. Now you're all saying, oh my gosh, Ray, what do you mean? Folks, here's the reality. We all are concerned about products that are made in China. We're concerned about chips that are made in China. We get it. We all have a concern, and we're trying to mitigate those risks. But I believe it's a bigger risk when we make the assumption, because the name's HP, there is no threat. Because then what do? Well, we don't investigate. We don't dig a little bit deeper. We don't set out on a path to mitigate a risk. We think we solved the problem. And I believe that HP is smart enough to figure out how to take advantage of the emotions of the American and European buyer around the China chip technology threat and use it to their advantage. Unfortunately, I don't believe the Europeans and the Americans are going to put enough scrutiny into it to realize if it's even a mitigation of a threat or a bigger one. And so I wanted to do some research. I wanted to dig into it a little bit. And folks, I put together some slides, and I want to share my thoughts. Last week, I talked about 9-Star and their ownership of Lexmark and Pantom, and I talked about my concerns, the threats. And folks, you know, those videos went over quite well. I had some interesting conversations from those videos. But today, I want to talk about a bigger threat. And that threat, I believe, is security theater and how the Americans and Europeans are seeing the threat from China, because I believe others are going to take advantage of that emotion, and they might not be solving a problem. They might be just, well, we could be just jumping out of the pan into the fire. So without any further ado, let's jump on the Sharp Interactive board, and I want to share my thoughts. So folks, anytime a company's stock collapses, its investors start putting scrutiny on the company, start putting scrutiny on the board of the company, the leadership of the company. And we all know the story at HP. A few months back, that stock was nearly $40 a share. It's down to $26.58. We all know that over the last few years, HP has been on a shopping spree buying up their own shares because they thought the price was undervalued. We all know today that the average that they have in that number is less than what it's selling today. So obviously, the leadership over at HP is going to get some real big pressure. And the leadership over there at HP is going to have to figure out how to get that stock price back up. And everybody knows the best way to do that is to do what? Cut costs. Folks, there's more bad news from the investor front regarding HP. HP Inc. price target cut at Bernstein on worries over printing supplies business. I want to share with you what this article says. And folks, I've been talking about this for a while now. The scrutiny that's going to come to the print channel is going to be so drastic. And the dealers that I know, the OEMs out there, they have to prepare for the scrutiny because it is coming. When the biggest one in the room is starting to show numbers that aren't real nice, not real promising, the scrutiny trickles downhill. Let me read this article to you. A Bernstein analyst lowered the price target of HP Inc. to 30 from 40, telling investors in a note Tuesday that printer supplies are the key driver of the company's financials. The analyst, who has a market perform rating on the stock, added, they historically generate nearly 100% of total company operating profits. Less so this year, given PC's strong growth and profitability. So we all know, and I've been screaming about this for a long time, without the profit from the supplies over at HP, what do they really have? They got a company that sells a whole lot of revenue, but they don't collect any profit from it. However, the Bernstein note stated HP's printer supplies revenues have been declining at an annual rate of 3% over the last 9 years, 10 years. 3% over the last 9 years, folks. This is crazy stuff. And alarmingly, supplies declined by 9% in the third quarter, with HP guiding that supplies will be down double digits over the next few quarters. So think about this, my friends. You got Eureka and Laura standing on stage, bragging about Amplify, standing on stage, bragging about all these subscriptions they sell. For the last 2 years, I've been screaming at Eureka and the team, share the details on the subscriptions because obviously they're not helping you grow your revenue and supplies. And you're telling the whole world, get ready for double-digit declines. If these subscriptions were nailing it, wouldn't you be growing? Folks, the bottom line is HP does a really good job at selling. And right now, I think they're selling investors more than they're selling benefits into the marketplace. They're selling investors more than they are selling benefits into the marketplace. And through those sales pitches, they're going to say some really interesting, crazy things. And so, folks, here's the reality. I'm on the HP website because I heard some rumblings out in the marketplace that HP is telling the remanufacturer of cartridges, hey, don't use the chips from China, use our chips. And I'm thinking to myself, well, okay, but where do you make your chips? Did you clear a workbench off in the garage out there and you're making the chips in California? Folks, this is ridiculous. Don't substitute one threat for an unknown threat. That's crazy, because then your guard might be let down. And any remanufacturer that believes this is some good idea without doing a whole lot of research, I think is naive as hell. Borderline stupid. We're going to allow HP to control all the chips for all the remanufacturers, and once they get all the control, they get everybody all excited. What are they going to do then? Come on, folks. The HP's under tremendous pressure. Stock falling off a cliff, board getting scrutinized, leadership getting scrutinized. Come on, what are you thinking? So then I want to talk about Poly. Remember Poly? They bragged about buying Poly. I did a satire video on it. People are going to turn their home offices into conference rooms, kind of making fun of this whole thing. But folks, I did some research on Poly. And you know, here we are. We're all talking about chips on printer cartridges. What about the chips on all the other stuff HP sells? Where's all the other stuff HP sells being manufactured? How many printer cartridges are being manufactured in China? Folks, HP is taking advantage of the emotions of the American and the European buyer. And they're good at selling. They're good at selling themselves to be a whole lot more relevant than they really are. You got to give them credit for that. But folks, I'm thinking about Poly, headsets, business phones, conference phones, video conferencing, software services. Who's listening in on conference calls? What software? Where's the cloud at for the services? I'm not making any accusations. I'm thinking we ought to be asking questions, right? What do we think happened when they bought Poly? They told Poly, hey, any manufacturing you're doing in China, we cleared off a workbench in Granddad's old garage, and you're going to be making all your products there right next to where we make the chips. Are we this naive? This is what we believe in America and Europe? I wanted to do some more digging on the Poly website. And folks, you know, I first of all, just Google Platronics Inc. Okay, here's what it says. It's an American electronics company branded Poly to reflect its dual Platronics and Polycon heritage, producing audio communications equipment for business and consumers. Its products support unified communications, mobile use, gaming, and music. Platronics is headquartered in Santa Cruz, California, and most of its products are produced in China. Until HP bought them and moved it all to the garage. Don't you have more concerns about the chips and this stuff? Unified communications. Who's involved in the unified communication we're having? So then I wanted to look some more. You know, the Polycon website, a lot of stuff out there. They got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 locations in China. 8 locations. They even have a location in Russia. I was surprised when I saw that on the website. Russia? I thought we weren't supposed to be selling in Russia. Maybe it's a mistake. Maybe the Polycon people put the HP people in charge of the website and they didn't update it, because you know HP is terrible at updating their website. I pointed out a couple of mistakes. The biggest one is they still got Christoph Schnell on the website. But folks, Russia, really? What are we doing with these locations in China? What, are we making all the Poly equipment in the garage and we're going to ship it all back to China for the people that use over there? We making it over there and we're shipping it all here. We make it into Mexico. We make it into China, shipping it to Mexico, and then shipping it here. What are we doing? What's the story? I think HP has a lot of questions to answer. When HP bought Poly, did Enrique stand on stage and said, we're so excited about all the Chinese manufacturing that Poly does, it lowers our costs big time and helps us deliver more profits to the shareholders? Or was that something he said behind the scenes? I don't remember the word China ever coming into any of the conversations when they bought Poly. There's another thing regarding Poly in China, Platronics in China. Let me just share this with you, folks. And I'm going to tell you right now, bad crap happens at all companies, and all companies have some bad actors that, some go to jail, some get fired. This is why I hate when companies talk about culture so just flagrant. I'm sure there was conversations about the culture of Poly and the culture of HP. Well, let me tell you a little bit about Poly. Photronics owned Polycon agrees to pay $36 million in Chinese bribery settlement. Like I said, they got fined, they got fired. Hopefully some of these lunatics went to jail. But when you run around and you're so bragging about culture, you better define it. Did Eureka stand on stage and said, Poly's had some issues, bribing going on over there in China? And we're really excited they cleaned all that up. Folks, ties to China are immense with Poly. Maybe we should start looking at that before we take our focus off a bigger problem as we talk about cartridges and printers. Here's something I want everybody to pay attention to because I was so intrigued by these numbers. I mean, these numbers are really intriguing. And this proves to me that HP has no manufacturing. Zero. So let me share you my thoughts. HP has 50,000 employees. They did $63.5 billion in 2021. That's $1,270,000 per employee. You're all saying, how in the world is that even possible? How does a $63.5 billion company have 50,000 employees? It's astonishing. Well, if you don't have any manufacturing, it's all overseas, and those aren't employees. Well, if they're not employees, that means you don't have control over them. If they're not employees, they're contractors, and contractors can do whatever they want. They don't even have to show up to meetings, right? So, folks, the reality is that's an interesting thing that should really be investigated by our analysts and our media. Of course, HP takes out full-page ads, and no one's going to talk about them, I mean, wouldn't it be nice if Frank Canada was interviewing some folks over at HP instead of talking about how great Amplify was? They were talking about, how do you have such few employees? Where are you manufacturing all of your products? How many manufacturing facilities do you have in China? Are those all contractor workers in China? Where are your chips actually coming from? But that'll never happen, folks, and you know why. But look at Ricoh. Our friends over at Ricoh have 78,360 employees. They do $12 billion US dollars. Think about that. 78,360 employees, they're doing $12 billion US dollars. That's $153,139 per employee. Konica Minolta, 39,000 employees, they do $6.3 billion. That's $161,038 per employee, right? Look at this one. Canon, 184,000 employees, and they do $24.5 billion. $133,127. Folks, do you see something going on here? Do you see something that should be asking some questions? Like, obviously, all these folks are controlling their manufacturing. They're actually employees. HP? Is everything contracted? Folks, you know what? It's not just about NineStar and Lexmark and Phantom and all the other Chinese companies and the chips and the technology. Those are severe threats, and we need to mitigate those threats. But I truly believe, and I'm going to say it one last time, a bigger threat is when you make the assumption there is no threat. That is the big threat. Some things to think about, my friends, because we all know this. Status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck in status quo, and I'll see you all tomorrow.